Thank you so much, and thank you all who have come, members of the dais, my friend John Vikas and Manish Tiwari, and of course the esteemed panel that we have just listened. And I believe there will be a Q&A also, which will after this. Yeah, we get some. So I want to make some 3 or 4 very quick postulates about, where we were bringing on this book. The first one was this was so difficult to bring this book out. We tried to go for almost 4 years for us to compile it. And why should you, and first and foremost, please buy the book. And why should you buy this book, or why should you read this book? Please pardon me, and of course I have 3 or 4 of my gurus here. Diwali is here, then Professor Turai is here, and all the mechanics of capitalist development in cities from him, and then of course Dada was there. Please pardon me for crossing the neck, but you can try to do that while I'm reading this. Why should you be reading this book? Because I would say 2 things. One, this book has been compiled by those who know how to write and who know how to fight. And it is both writing very important because we know the kind and the types of acts that are happening these days. It's very difficult to even express your voices. And to fight, because if you reclaim those spaces in the city center, the fight I do not just mean physical, but I mean, all those spaces that have to be built in this fight for a secure urban future. Now, I have built on that, and why? Because I think most of the work that has come in this book will resonate to your daily life. I mean, you may be living, and we just heard when Dr. Mishra was telling us, all the houses. But Dr. Mishra in Gurgaon, I know Trump is building 2 towers. There's a house, here 2 towers costing 5 crore rupees. And a 100 crore house, all houses by the way sold. But at the same time, when you come to Gurgaon, it's shit out. And people even fear once you have clouds. So, this is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for everyone. But that doesn't mean that there is no segregation. Let me try to build on that. So I think it is going to resonate to your lives. And it is also going to provide not a great meaning, but at least some sort of, maybe at least some resonance is there, at least something is happening. How will it change? I cannot say, because books are meant to change. Books are meant to change both the spatial and the temporality of the system. Well, that's the intent in which we are trying to do this. Now, coming to something that has not been there, or maybe it has been covered, but something that I would like to talk about, is about, Urbanization speaks about the helix, really, So here I talk about what is the country's helix of urbanization. I would say it's intertwined into the helix comprises 1, the huge form of capital accumulation that is taking place. Cities were meant to be centers of capital accumulation. It is larger, but it means that that is how you create the service for the cities through the process of production. And while you create this process of production, you democratize it back. That is how we generally understand. So that's one thing. The second one is something that we have not been able to capture that, but of course there is a chapter. It is about the whole question of climate change and its impact on cities, and the kind of uncertainty that it is bringing. Now we have the IPCC report 6 that points out any child born after 1996 has not seen a single normal now. Any child born after 1996 has seen disaster once in 6 months. So abnormality is the new momentum. That's the second helix, and both are together because you have mitigation strategies, you have adaptation strategies, but the way we are building our urban infrastructure further compounds the problem of our livability. For example, Patna was never flooded. Thanks to our smart city program, Patna also is very proud of that. Patna never got flooded. Ganges is quite low, Patna is very high. So one of the manifestations. And the third one, because normally you have two in the head, the third one is the whole social stratification that exists. The social marginalization, the marginalized are further marginalized. Now let me try to build layers on that, and let me just try to bring this argument here. Is that if you see post-90s city, what are the processes that are unleashed in the cities post-90s? The first process is that cities which were supposed to be production houses, production centers, and where you had large apartments, say for example in Delhi you had the Modi fields. In Gujarat, most of the cities you had those cotton textile fields. There you had a composition of the people where in that production process, this happened in the 70s and 80s, the people, and I would say primarily the working people, had a huge bargaining power vis-a-vis the state and vis-a-vis the city to reclaim those spaces. Kuldeep, you and I, we worked together in the students' movement, if you remember. And you've seen people marching in lakhs in Delhi, just from Delhi, 2 lakh people marching from Delhi, reclaiming this spaces for housing, for various issues. But come 70s and 80s, there is a transition in, of course, capitalist production that I put. And Professor Gurura also points out the whole question of capital-intensive technological solutions in cities. Professor Gurura, please pardon me for borrowing your phrase, because that's what he stated, and I have been stating it several times. Is that we have been planning and designing a city because the design was such, more capital investments in the cities. And then Guru says your ship travels more than the average commute. So the average commute is here is around 5 to 7 kilometers in the city. But the ship travels for 15 kilometers, it doesn't go to the city because the STPs are designed like that. So this transformation that was taking place in the 70s and 80s, where these spaces were giving way, these spaces could have been easily utilized for social housing, for development, for ecology and geography being the driver. But then come the 90s, and it was hoped, it was thought that cities would become engines of growth, and because cities would become engines of growth, the major focus would be to attract capital. And to attract capital, real estate was one of the principal drivers. We've seen that. Unfortunately, that starts the first process of massive segregation, of massive humongous inequality that starts existing. That's the first one. And because the whole capacity of, the cities were giving way from production houses to being centers of service, where 92% of the people are now employed in economy. The second thing that is also important in this process is that if you look globally, something, because Pushpaj is pointing me that the very little time is there. Globally is what in our political economy we've learned from you, sir, is about the question of use value and exchange value. And I'm so glad, by the way, Shashi Tharoor wrote an article just the day before yesterday. I was so happy to read his article because John sir, you must hear it.
He writes about everything.
Yeah, because he was the one of the ardent commanders of what was called the Washington Consensus. Because someone who really, now he has written a piece, which I would say is a kind of a confession, and a blatant attack on what Washington Consensus is. What is Washington Consensus? And that's why, is water a need or a right? And that's what I've always been saying. The Washington Consensus made us believe across the globe that water is a need. Something that could be you and I, and of course Monique thought that water, if it's a right, then the right accrues from the state. And the right accrues from the state, then this cannot be commoditized. And it's not one. And we have the UNCTAD report, any number of services were transformed from, in political economies or what we say, from use value to exchange value, and this further led to this huge amount of capital accumulation that started taking place. Just last 2 minutes, and I will finish with that. What are the two other processes? This has led to a situation where the marginalized have been further pushed, both social marginalization. You see, and I remember once interviewing Biswara Wilson, and and we know the debate that took place between Mahatma Gandhi and Ambedkar. Why Dr. Ambedkar was so pertinent about pushing people to the city because it Happens to be told Urbanization that his grandfather was a railroad worker. He had never seen paisa on his hands. But his father came to the cities, and the first time he realized that there is something called money. Social segregation didn't end, but at least he had some money, he could, and that's why they were able to study and grow. Unfortunately, in the last few decades, the social stratification has not diminished further by. There have been processes in which this thing is going. So, unleashing these processes, and that brings me to the last point, and that's what we play actually. Is Manishi, I was with Jan Varapagis, who's the former finance minister of Greece. Now, this is what Sandeep was pointing out, there's something very interesting. How is accumulation taking place? You work, you produce, and that's how accumulation taking place. First time historically, in the process of historic evolution of humankind, when we do not work, we lead to this process of accumulation, and that's what is very vividly captured in his book called Techno-Feudalism, the End of Capitalism. I wish this becomes the end of capitalism. Where he brings out a very interesting fact that while we are moving the Facebook scrolling up and down, that also leads to massive accumulation of capital taking place. And India being one of the largest spaces where our digital penetration is high, but not forgetting the point that 95% of world's computing power lies only with 5 transnational corporations. 95% of world's computing power. What does it mean in simple terms if we have to think about the futures? Apart from climate, apart from social, Salil and I were discussing about the whole question of social stratification, and of course we have the great Indian segregation report, one can easily go through it. I think what are the alternatives? And that's sort of what provoked me, Professor Mishra. Something which I could understand why you're provoking. I do not think that the solution can come from a pan-state intervention. I think, and mind you, Pushkar, I'm coming from a very small left lens that I see. State is a very important tool that we use for democratizing surplus. But mark my words, with my experience and what we do, I think we need to build multiple roots and roads and interconnect them. That's what we are trying to resonate together. Why? Because if Uber is there, what is the alternative that we have to build in the city? I'm advisor to Chandigarh Citizen Foundation, Manish knows it there. I mean, if that whole process is to be seen in a city lens, then what are these processes that have to be unleashed? And where we bring in the whole question of enabling that environment, and enabling that environment not just, the whole question of democratizing the service, but also creating those alternatives. And this is what John, I don't know whether you are aware, he done with the urbanization. The only state in the country where an urban policy, and of course the first one was with Rajiv Gandhi, National Commission on Urbanization. Fabulous work, fantastic work. We've copied a lot from there, because I was in the UPI Commission, where we've given them digital town halls. We've given them digital advisors to the mayor. We have to think little differently. There's a huge bunch of policy that runs through some 16,000 pages, of course, the concise focus, and the cabinet has recently. So the point is, people are going to come to the city. Largest number of Homo sapiens are going to be Indian, the urban Homo sapiens. How do we create those processes, writing, fighting, and reclaiming these spaces for a better urban? Madhu is here, we're trying to work for the hit city also. The point is, so I think with the limited time that I have, I think the point is how we create these spaces where we reclaim the space, the right in the city. Lastly, which is why I think is important, when I was writing this Right in the City chapter, something that was not there earlier when we were writing this chapter is the whole question of SIR. Why it is important for me? I'll tell you why. I was going through the data of 2011. Now just imagine 2011 population and current voters. Do you know that if your population and your voters is not even 60%, which means if you have 100 people living in the city, and I'm talking about urban India, and you can lay a pattern, because I work for Shimla as well. If you have 100 people living in the city, ideally if you reduce the population 8% in less than 15 years, then you should have somewhere around 90 or 80 people as eligible voters. But what is the number of eligible voters in the city? The number, as I have the further simplified, is not more than 55, 60. Huge bulk of informal workers. How do we reclaim those spaces if there's visible child taking place? I got stuck because when this SNI was going on, the booth level officer called me thrice. I said, Baba, I have contested the election, I have been with the deputy mayor of the city. If I have been approached 3 times, imagine what is the state of affairs. So I think these are new nuances in the urban hemisphere that we need to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now we invite our distinguished guest for the special address, Dr. John Williams. First member of Parliament representing Kerala and Rajasthan, and one of the country's most prominent voices of media and representatives from the world.
So I shouldn't speak.
Currently, he serves as a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs and Committee on Public Undertakings. He was also honored with the prestigious Sansad Ratna Award in 2023 in recognition of his exceptional legislative work. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Williams for the special address.
Dear friends, this is just to make a few introductory remarks before we are going to listen to my esteemed colleague, the Member of Parliament. She managed to make a very precise and right presentation of the organization. Anish,
I am not listening.
Tikinder, you haven't given me the book.
I am sorry. You were supposed to.
So, I am free to speak with you. See, I am coming from Kerala. The moment I land in Delhi, I get a kiss. Big city, sports, difference. The moment I return to Kerala, land in Trivandrum, my throat is clear. I can breathe. So if you ask me what is the difference between Kerala and Delhi, it's very hot. Regular. This is speaking out of my experience. See, Tikinder has spoken and he has given an introduction about the contours of the book. Very erudite persons are contributed, and I feel that most of these people are conversed with this point. Since I said I will speak briefly about my experience, I came to Delhi in late 80s. I was a student in jail. At that time, for me, Delhi was a benign city. Now, despite me being a member of Parliament, my experience of Delhi was a monstrous state. It's not good. If at all somebody gives me a choice of picking up the Delhi of late 80s or early 90s, I would certainly shed this Delhi and would pick up that Delhi. I remember traveling in a Bajaj Super, going to Delhi to buy beef and to come back to Sunday. The choice was there. Choice of meal, choice of dressing, choice of going against it. Moreover, the choice of protest. Now, as Tikinder rightly said, the bargaining capacity of people vis-a-vis the employer and the state has been reduced drastically. This shows how the city has become exclusive. Exclusivity means only a small, minuscule section of the city owns the city. all others feel being alienated. Manish is a seasoned parliamentarian and knows his law. He's an illustrious legal luminary also. I stay in South. I can tell you one thing. I cannot even open the window of my flat. One day, one window was open. My daughter lost her laptop. The monkeys came inside. I have never got fresh air in my flat. Last 5 years I am staying. I don't know what has happened to me. Now, the other day the Supreme Court judge said, a Muslim is unable to find a house in Delhi. It's not a new phenomenon. Even in early 90s, after this Babri Masjid demolition, my colleagues found it difficult to get a house because they are Muslim. Now it has intensified. Now it is the normal of Delhi. So how city has changed? That's why the question comes, whose Delhi it is? A city, whose city it is? I am glad that I am coming from Kerala. Recently, which we have got the egalitarian society, just was one of the members of Urban Commission, the one state alone, which had an urban policy commission. And we have envisaged a scheme or a policy how our urbanization should be in Kerala for the coming 25 years, not for 5 years, 10 years, 25 years. I do believe that every city has got a distinct character. Should be having that. It should be modeled by culture, history, geography, the attitude of the people, the governance, the administration. Multiple verticals should play a role in the formation or molding of this city. The moment we decide, it's the government only which will decide how a city should be there. The city will become monstrous like Delhi. Now, we are living in an era when the most powerful person in the world says that there is nothing but climate change, it's a hoax. He dictates, he says that it's a hoax, it's a scam. Every year, Kerala loses land, precious land, because of the simulation. You can see it. We are victims of it. So I feel that we need to have meaningful debates how our cities and how our urbanization should be carried. Now, there is a phenomenon called ghettoization. If somebody wants to give a symbol to an average city in North India, what should be there? Manish, it will be bulldozer. The symbol of the city will be bulldozer. Not anything else, not even a flower. The lotus has to be replaced by bulldozer now. So, what does it mean? You don't need to require people whom you don't want. If you go to a most prosperous state in this country, one particular community will reside only in one place as a ghetto. So cities means ghettoization. You are castigating large number of population for the mainstream. The so-called inclusivity that is the mantra of any democratic society has become the casual. So I feel that beyond the contours of, say, having fresh air or everyone in Delhi checks what should be the pollution level today, somebody there checking the pressure. I can see most of the people. It's like, as much as it's normal actually. So beyond that, we need to have a comprehensive, wholesome view how our cities because most of our streets are going to be on the urbanization trajectory. And I know that most of you are going to get we don't have villages now. It's from one end to other and it's urban habitat. So we feel that we feel much more focused on that. And in the city, the people matters, their culture matters, the history of the city matters, all this should be taken into account. Why such planning needs to be done? I can tell you together. And all those people who have contributed, which has triggered a debate and a discourse, which I feel that it shouldn't be in these four boundaries alone. We should leave for a meaningful debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I will invite our distinguished guest for the We are joined by Shri Manish Tiwari. Sir is a third-term member of Parliament, currently representing Chandigarh in the Lok Sabha, a senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India, and former Union Minister for Information and Broadcasting. He brings decades of experience in law and governance to his forum. I welcome Shri Manish Tiwari for the keynote address.
I don't know what to say, taken the right. Just spoke about
The distinguished author of this book, Shri Pvt.Ltd, my esteemed colleague and friend, Dr. Urbanization, Srimati Urbanization, my colleague and very old comrade in arms, and now one of the ideologues of the Indian National Congress, the gentleman right there in the red turban, distinguished panelists who were here talking about the book just before us, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I must thank Rudy for putting this evening together. The Samruddh Foundation is doing excellent work in terms of flagging issues, putting them on the table, and giving space to alternative voices to be able to articulate themselves and be heard in a very constricted and ever-constricting narrative ecosystem. So therefore, my friend, congratulations for doing this great service. As I was going through the various essays in this book, I couldn't but help wonder that going back to the earliest iteration of cities in the form of city-states in ancient Greece, for the better part of our historical evolution, cities were essentially posters of imperial power. So they were speaking monuments of the grandeur, the conquests, and the idiosyncrasies of whichever was the prevailing dynasty at that particular point in time. And that's how some of the great cities of not only the ancient world, but even during the early parts of the 20th century, really came up and then transformed themselves into commercial hubs, essentially a place where people could come and exchange goods and services. And that is how the historical evolution of the earlier cities really took place. But it's really the first industrial revolution when people moved from pastoral societies to areas where organized form of manufacturing started coming up, that the problem of urbanization really started confronting policymakers or people who were engaged in this space. And it's indeed regrettable that from the first industrial revolution to the fourth, we've not really been able to surmount the crisis of urbanization. It has only compounded itself and grown manifold in magnitude. Some of those challenges were very, very articulately underscored by very distinguished people on the panel who work in this space. But the one thing that really concerns me, beyond the very topical and relevant challenges of air pollution, which my colleague John Rudas flagged, or the congestion, ghettoization in our cities, the lack of social and economic equity, the fact that rising prices of real estate are driving the working class out of what really constitute the core areas of the city, not only to the periphery, but even beyond, is that a very different kind of a challenge stares us in the face, which we really are not even so cognizant about. And that is linked to the very rapid evolution of the fourth industrial revolution and its implications on the future of work and as to how the coming decades of the 21st century are going to pan themselves out in terms of completely and absolutely revolutionizing the workspaces. From the first industrial revolution till the fourth, wherever technology has made progress, there have been concerns, there have been trepidations, there have been naysayers, there have been people who have adapted themselves to the evolution. But with the fourth industrial revolution, you are witnessing something which is completely different in the sheer scale of the transformation that it is going to bring about. We've heard about blue-collar revolts. I don't think the time is very far away when you will actually hear about white-collar revolts. Because technology is going to completely subsume many of the occupations, especially in the services sector, which make cities survive, thrive, ghettoize, become the constricted spaces that they are. Already automation is taking a toll on manufacturing. But the advances, especially in artificial intelligence, are so exponential in nature that even those who are at the cutting edge of this innovation do not understand it completely. For example, the last iteration of ChatGPT evolved without any human interface at all. So therefore, you had technology essentially correcting itself, and if at all there was minimal human intervention, that human intervention was then absorbed by the technology, written by itself into the code, and it would then go into a self-correcting mode. In fact, there's a lovely book, it's a little sensational in its title, but it's worth a read. It says that if we make the super AI, all of us will die. So therefore, and this book is written by two gentlemen who are signatories on the original one-line charter saying that the evolution of AI needs to have very stringent guardrails so that it does not completely go off the rails. The reason why I am flagging this in a conversation on urbanization is because it has a flip side to it also. It gives you the possibility of actually decongesting your urban spaces. For example, like during COVID-19, of course, you had the huge and very tragic migrant crisis, which exposed the utter insensitivity and the heartlessness, which is so intrinsic to our urban milieu. But it also did something different. It allowed or it compelled people to voluntarily move out of cities and work remotely from areas which they thought were far more habitable. And that trend has not really reversed itself completely. Of course, there are very few who can, at this point in time, afford the luxury of that kind of a living. However, it can also become more, because eventually, in the context of India, and I've been saying it repeatedly ad nauseum, for a country which occupies 1/28 of the landmass of the world, to support the kind of population that we have and growing is a complete and utter mismatch. And therefore, the challenge of urbanization can only be combated if you de-urbanize. Of course, for a large number of people who eke out a very subsistence level of living, these are options which are really not on the table as of now. But they perhaps will be on the table in the years and decades ahead. So therefore, I think, and with great respect to all the urban planners and all the urban thinkers, we are really trying to solve a problem of the past and possibly not comprehending the problem of the future. As someone who's had the privilege of representing three very diverse parliamentary constituencies, a parliamentary constituency which was the hub of the medium and small enterprises and had a very vibrant rural hinterland, to a constituency which was completely agrarian in character with little pockets of urbanization here and there, and now of course to a completely urbanized setting, it has given me a perspective about the possibilities which are there and need to be energized. Because when I look at the problems of our cities, especially brownfield cities which have developed over, let's say, 500 years, 300 years, there is only an X amount that you can do in a brownfield setting. And of course, contrary to everybody's wish and desire, we are not really building new cities. I think it's been what? I mean, in terms of size and scale, Chandigarh or Gandhinagar or Bhubaneswar were the last really big planned urban enterprises that we had undertaken. So therefore, we need to very seriously think, how do we, or is it possible that we de-urbanize and spread things around? Because
so many
because
even
if you are attempting to put an infrastructure into cities, what you are essentially doing is running the same place. And that is not a sustainable or a viable option any longer. For example, I recall when way back in 2003 they started building the mass rapid transport system in Delhi. It was supposed to be a magic bullet for the traffic congestion in Delhi. And today you have an over-congested metro and you have over-congested roads. So therefore, I think the great service which this book does, it actually is a starting point to start having a very serious conversation, given the fact that by 2030, 40% of 1.4 billion people, which is, if we have the math right, it could be more than that, are actually going to be living in what, quote unquote, we call urban spaces. And therefore, the challenge really is not to only try and spend money in trying to put infrastructure into these cities to cope with the influx, but to see as to how we can go backwards. I'll end by talking about, because I heard one of the panelists mention it about smart cities. So, towards its twilight days, I was the chairperson of the advisory committee of the Smart City Mission in Chandigarh. And by that time, these guys had spent about 1,000 crores on making the city smart. So I asked them a fundamental question. I said, please tell me what makes the city smart. And after all, you spent about 1,000 crores over 10 years, making Chandigarh smart. Tell me what makes the city smart. And so therefore there was no answer. And I think those guys who thought up this whole conception of a smart city did not really understand the S of smart or the C of cities. Because a substantial part of those 1,000 crores was actually spent on regular municipal projects. Because your municipal corporations or your urban local bodies are so starved of funds And suddenly you got this influx of money, and you said, hey, Christmas, let's spend it on which essentially is not a wrong thing to do, because that also needed to be fixed. But that is not what makes a city smart. So I'm still waiting for somebody to give me an answer, and I've been looking for it, that what makes a city smart. And thank you very much for that.
No, just finish off.
And now is the time, the moment we all have been waiting for. The formal launch of city limits, the crisis of organization. I request all those on the dais, distinguished guests, panelists, field editors, and FA classes to launch the vote.
Please.
Come.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we near the close of this wonderful evening, I request Shri Deshpande, Managing Trustee at Samruddhi Bharat Foundation and editor of Reading India series, to offer the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Since I'm the only one holding back the audience here and the snacks outside, Namoji is very quick. The book certainly, we had a very illuminating discussion. The book certainly helps us ask the right questions about, in Hindi there is a word from the movie, Roti Kapra Makan, Sarak Bijli Pani, Jaan Jaan Bijli Ka. And most of all, Kiska Sheher, Kiska Desh, whose city and whose nation is this? We have only one option. The book does offer an alternative. I don't think there is any other option, because on the other side there is no planning. A mythical Ambedkar 20 years from now, 21 years from now, 2027. There are civic rights and freedoms are circumscribed. And as our keynote speaker rightly said, where we don't know how the city is and why it is smart. So I thank the distinguished legislators here, Tijari sir and Vidras sir, for taking the time to be here and giving us a lot of food for thought. The esteemed panelists who also dissected the crises, I would say multiple crises of the organization very well. Of course, Dikendra who collaborated us for 4 years as the and he has put together a fantastic set of authors, one of the foremost minds who thinkers, practitioners and policymakers who work on our organization. Our series editors, Nidula ma'am, Saita ma'am, Professor Akash Rapport, who have actually put together this set of 15 books. Many of these are now being translated into Hindi. You will see them outside, and I encourage you to pick them up. And finally, Penguin for reposing faith and Samruddhi Bharat for bringing out this Reading India series and actually helping us now move on to the next set. You've been a fantastic audience. Thank you so much.